Early on in my career, I've always done some sort of public service. So, I was a tourism coordinator as a high school student, worked in a tourism booth for Cornwall and Seaway Valley Tourism. I've worked on environmental projects throughout the region. And I do have a family. And with that family, my son is now 26, but I was involved in educational reform when he was going through school. Most recently with my daughter, who's 9, involved in education reform again, working to make the schools as best as they can be, sitting on parent council. But even other things, I was a victim services responder for Vickers of SDNG and Oxosny in the early days when they just came to the area, and did a lot of work with people that had found themselves in tragic situations, sudden deaths, loss, that type of thing, all throughout SDSG. And, I've always been working on different things. And my whole, if somebody said to sum it up in one sentence, I would say it's always been about the people for me. It's always been about the people. Every job that I've ever done that I've been attracted to and wanted to do professionally or volunteer in my community, it's always been about the people. And it's always been about moving that needle forward so the community is better. When you sit at county council, you are placed there as the deputy mayor or mayor, but you are there to look at the broad scope of SDNG, and the things that are impacting every little municipality and township comes to the table, and you're looking at it as what can we do as this great geographic area to make things better for our residents. So we've had the conversation extensively about education and how we need better representation to make sure that rural education is well represented. We've had the conversation about mental health and making sure that our Ontario provincial police officers have tools in their tool belt to be able to help whenever one of our residents is going through the worst day of their life. They've got that added resource, and we couldn't get funding from the province, so the counties, I championed it to make sure that the counties put some funding dollars on the table. We've had the conversation around long-term care for our seniors and wanting them to have the best facilities within SDNG as possible. We've had the conversation around housing and how it's impacting our residents. So really the county council table is that broad upper tier municipal level where you do champion directly to the province, hey, we need this help and we need the resources to be able to make the changes. The fact that there's a provincial plan for Eastern Ontario that does not include the 138 that has been discussed over and over again and is of great concerns to our residents, to the point that we have residents that will not drive on the 138 because they find it unsafe. That's a massive issue. 31, one of the major arteries to the nation's capital, and we have municipalities that are growing, that have more commuters that are going to Ottawa. To not have that recognized as something that there should be a long-term plan to address the traffic, we were absolutely forgotten. And at the county level, we've had a lot of discussions. I previously sat on the police services board. There were a lot of discussions about the safety factor. So there's all these discussions going on, and people are absolutely livid, and they're worried as well. I mean, commuting in the winter on an unsafe highway, whenever you've got the weather factors and driver factors as well, but the road is not designed to deal with that volume. It's not working for the area. Mm-hmm. Look, the people in our riding are doing the living, the working. The last thing they want is a pat on the head. They actually want to know, how is this going to make my life better? How am I going to be able to raise my children better? How is it going to be less of a struggle to manage my position where I'm carrying, you talk about PSWs, they are in a situation where they are dealing with the people that this community loves the most at the final days, the most vulnerable folks in our society. How can it even be, that platitude? when we've put these people in charge of our most vulnerable, our most vulnerable. I'm not interested in those sound bites, if you will. I'm interested in doing the work to get it so these folks can do the work that they signed up to do with the supports that they need to do the work. We have to find the things that are common within the geographic area because it is such a large geographic area. So when I look at the agricultural sector, a lot of their concerns in that sector about attracting employees, like getting employees to work on the farm, the mental health piece that they're working on, and housing. They actually talk about housing. All of those are things that everybody is discussing. So when we find commonalities and we're able to kind of say, okay, would this work, for this area? Maybe it needs to be tweaked. Maybe a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work. When we talk about housing in the agricultural sector, they would rather us build up, not out. So you're protecting, farmland that once you take it away, you can't produce new farmland. And so when we're having those discussions, having multiple partners sitting around the table and having the discussion with the idea of solving it instead of pitting people against each other or whatever the case may be, I think that's the approach I think this area needs. My family dynamic is I have a 26-year-old son who is back at college, and we often talk about how is he going to do that leap to home ownership. And when you talk to the 26-year-olds and 27-year-olds, why am I doing this if I can't even afford a house? That's real. Like that is impacting their hope, how they see their future, how they're going to move forward, how they're going to make plans. That's a real concern. And it's one that I hear with the parents that I know have children that are grown up, that are around my son's age. And we worry about it because, they will even leave the area or go somewhere else, and they just feel so deflated if they've worked so hard to get that career and then make the next step. So that's a real issue. And as a parent, when you talk about the pandemic and mental health and the education thing, online learning worked for some folks. It didn't work for my family. My daughter loves school. She loves to be at school. She really, really missed her friends and her teachers and that school community that every kid needs as a support system. And we're still coming back from that. I mean, anyone that thinks we can just move on and it's business as usual, I would say not so fast. I'm so connected to so many parts of our riding. I have either through family memories or professional connections or volunteer opportunities. I just feel that because of that connection, I'm here to protect this riding. I'm here to advocate for this riding. You couple that connection and deep respect and love for our riding with my professional experience. I do have an extensive experience as a public servant. I know how government works. I know how rolling out provincial programs works. I know how the funding models work. That combined, I really can champion this and have deeper conversations with people about what matters to them. My whole entire career has been about people. And honestly, the people that I've run into, when they're bringing a concern forward, they want to know, did you hear me? Do you see me? Do you see why this decision is impacting me? And that's something that I've been very proud of, that it didn't matter if I was a volunteer victim services responder or I was managing a Service Ontario or I was chair of my daughter's school. Hearing, listening, having the discussion, being able to be experienced enough to know the questions to ask and be experienced enough to know who to talk to about things done or get the answer. I think that's the difference for me. I've been at this for a long time in different roles that now all come together that make me the strongest for this role.